My name is Alana, and at 31 years old, I never imagined a forgotten nanny cam would save my life. That Wednesday morning, rushing for my 12-hour shift at Boston Children's Hospital, I left our house thinking Derek was the perfect husband, handling our twin boys with such care. Something felt different about how eager he was for me to leave, but I pushed away that nagging feeling. 7 years of marriage had taught me to trust him completely, or so I thought. Before I continue with what shattered my world, tell me where you're watching from and subscribe if you've ever had that gut feeling something wasn't right. The alarm buzzed at 5:30 that morning, but Derek was already awake, sitting on the edge of our bed, claiming he couldn't sleep. That should have been my first warning sign, considering he usually slept through earthquakes. Our colonial home in suburban Boston was still dark, the October chill creeping through the windows I'd been asking him to seal for weeks. I padded down the hallway to check on Ethan and Noah, our 4-year-old twins, who were still sleeping peacefully in their race car beds. Their room, painted in soft blues with dinosaur decals Derek had spent a whole weekend putting up, looked exactly as we'd left it after story time. Those boys were my entire world, the reason I picked up every extra shift the hospital offered. Derek appeared behind me in the doorway, coffee mug already in hand. His dark hair was perfectly styled, which struck me as odd for someone who claimed insomnia. He wrapped his arm around my waist, pulling me close. The gesture felt rehearsed somehow, like he was playing a part in a movie only he had the script for. "You should really take that overtime shift they offered yesterday," he said, his breath warm against my ear. "We could use the money for the boys' college fund." The suggestion made sense on paper. We'd refinanced our mortgage 6 months ago, when rates dropped and every penny counted. Derek's IT consulting business had been slow lately, or so he told me. Working from home for 2 years meant he handled most of the household duties, while I pulled long hours at the hospital. It was an arrangement that worked, or at least I thought it did. I headed to the kitchen where Derek had already laid out breakfast. Scrambled eggs, wheat toast, even fresh orange juice. The man who usually grabbed a protein bar was playing chef. The coffee maker gurgled, filling the space with that rich aroma that usually comforted me. This morning it made my stomach turn slightly. Lisa asked if we're still coming to dinner Saturday. I mentioned spreading jam on my toast. "Your mum wants to take the boys to the pumpkin patch Sunday." Derek's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Actually, Mum might need to reschedule. She texted me late last night about feeling under the weather." Strange, considering Patricia had called me yesterday afternoon about how excited she was to see her grandsons. But I didn't have time to question it. The clock on the microwave showed 6:15, and Boston traffic would be murder if I didn't leave soon. While I gathered my things, Derek packed my lunch with unusual attention to detail. Turkey sandwich with that expensive mustard from Whole Foods apple slices with peanut butter. Even a note that said, "Love you to the moon." He'd filled my travel mug with coffee, exactly how I liked it, 2 sugars and oat milk. The lunch bag went into my work tote alongside my stethoscope and badge. "I filled your gas tank yesterday," he added, handing me my keys. "And I checked your tire pressure. Everything's perfect." Perfect. That word hung in the air like fog. Since when did Derek check tire pressure? The man who forgot our anniversary last year was suddenly husband of the year. My exhaustion from covering shifts for the past 3 months must have been playing tricks on my mind. This was what I'd wanted. Right. A supportive partner who picked up slack when work demanded everything from me. I stopped by the hallway mirror to check my appearance one last time. Navy scrubs that had seen better days. Hair pulled back in a ponytail that would become messy. Within hours, dark circles under brown eyes that no concealer could hide. Behind my reflection, I caught Derek watching me with an expression I couldn't read. "You sure you're okay with the boys all day?" I asked, turning to face him. "I know they've been extra energetic lately." "Alana, sweetheart, I've got this. His smile was too wide, showing teeth like a salesman closing a deal. We'll have a guy's day, build forts, watch cartoons, maybe make those dinosaur cookies they love. The image should have warmed my heart. Instead, something cold settled in my chest. Derek stepped closer, cupping my face in his hands. His wedding ring caught the kitchen light. The same band I'd placed on his finger 7 years ago when we promised forever in that little church in Salem. His eyes, usually warm brown, like melted chocolate, seemed distant, despite the physical closeness. "What time will you be home exactly?" he asked, thumb stroking my cheek. 7:30, maybe 8 if we get emergencies. I pulled back slightly. Why? Just want to have dinner ready. Thought I'd try that new lasagna recipe your mother sent. My mother had been dead for 2 years. The recipe was from his mother. Another odd mistake from someone who never forgot details about his consulting projects. But pointing it out would start an argument, and I needed to leave. He walked me to the garage, carrying my bags like we were newlyweds heading to the airport for our honeymoon. The Toyota Camry sat next to his BMW, a visual reminder of our different priorities. Practical versus flashy, though lately I'd been paying for both. "Drive safe," he said, leaning in for a kiss. It felt mechanical lips, pressed together out of habit rather than desire. "Love you." "Love you too." I responded automatically, muscle memory taking over where genuine emotion had faded. As I backed out of the garage, I saw him standing in the doorway, silhouetted against the warm light of our home. He waved and I waved back, neither of us knowing that this perfectly orchestrated morning would be our last as husband and wife. The image of him there playing the devoted husband while our boys slept upstairs would burn in my memory alongside what I'd discover in just a few hours. The drive to Boston Children's Hospital usually gave me time to mentally prepare for the chaos ahead. Pediatric nursing wasn't for the faint of heart, especially in the ICU where I'd worked for 6 years. But that morning, my mind kept circling back to Derek's behavior. The elaborate breakfast, the filled gas tank, the constant checking of my schedule. When had my husband become so attentive? And why did it feel more like surveillance than support? Traffic on I-93 moved at its usual crawl, giving me too much time to think. The radio played yesterday's hits, while my mind catalogued recent changes. Derek had been working from home, more claiming client meetings were going virtual. He'd started doing laundry his way of helping, he said. But twice I'd found my favorite sweaters. Shrunk clothes I'd had since college, ruined by hot water they'd survived for years. The hospital parking garage was fuller than usual when I arrived at 7:15. My spot on the 3rd floor meant a longer walk, but the exercise helped clear my head. The October air bit at my exposed arms, reminding me I'd forgotten my jacket in Derek's enthusiastic rush to help me leave. Brenda caught me at the elevator, her silver hair pinned back in the same style she'd worn for 20 years of nursing. "Girl, you look tired. Those doubles catching up." "Just need coffee." I lied, pressing the button for the 5th floor. "How's the unit?" "Swamped. 3 admissions overnight, 2 post-ops from emergency surgery, and the Martinez baby is finally stable but needs constant monitoring." She studied my face with that maternal concern that made her everyone's favorite charge nurse. "You sure you're okay? Could call in someone else for overtime." The suggestion was tempting, but bills didn't pay themselves. "I'm good, really, just haven't been sleeping well." The pediatric ICU greeted us with its familiar symphony of beeping monitors, humming ventilators, and distant crying. Morning shift change meant organized chaos as night nurses updated day staff. I found my assignment sheet and dove into the routine that had become second nature. My first patient was Tommy, age 3, recovering from heart surgery. His mother slept in the chair beside his bed, hand stretched through the rail to touch his foot. She startled awake when I entered, immediately asking if everything was okay. That parental terror never got easier to witness the fear that any movement meant crisis. "He's doing great," I assured her, checking his vitals and adjusting IV drips. "Vitals are stable and his colour looks much better than yesterday." The morning flew by in a blur of medications assessments and documentation. By 9:15, I finally had a moment to grab coffee from the break room. My phone sat in my pocket, heavy with unread notifications. Derek had texted twice about the boys eating breakfast, complete with photos of them covered in syrup. Performative parenting at its finest. That's when I remembered the nanny cam. We'd installed it last week when Madison, our occasional babysitter, watched the boys for date night. The small camera sat disguised as a picture frame on the living room shelf, synced to an app on both our phones. Derek had forgotten it existed after the initial setup, dismissing it as another one of my safety obsessions. Curiosity made me open the app, expecting to see the boys playing with blocks or watching Paw Patrol. Instead, I saw Derek in our master bedroom, phone pressed to his ear. The volume was low, but I could make out a woman's voice on speaker. "She's gone." "You're sure?" the voice asked. My blood turned to ice water. I knew that voice, knew it like I knew my own heartbeat. "Yeah, 12-hour shift. Won't be back until tonight," Derek confirmed, running his hand through his hair. "You can come over in 20 minutes. "Thank God. I hate all this sneaking around. When are you going to tell her?" "After the holidays. Need to get everything in place first." The voice belonged to my sister Chloe, my 28-year-old sister who was supposedly in Miami for her marketing job. The same sister who'd held my hand through Dad's cancer treatments, who'd been my maid of honor, who'd called me crying last month about a bad breakup. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped the phone. One of the other nurses asked if I was okay, and I managed to nod, mumbling something about needing air. But there was no time for breakdown. Tommy's monitor alarmed, and I had to push everything aside to be the professional these children needed. For the next hour, I operated on autopilot. Muscle memory guided me through tasks while my mind raced. There had to be an explanation. Maybe Chloe surprised us with a visit. Maybe Derek was planning something for my birthday next month. Maybe I'd misheard the conversation entirely. At 10:30, during another brief break, I checked the camera again. Chloe was in my kitchen wearing my robe, the pale pink one Derek had given me for Christmas, the one that lived on the hook behind our bathroom door. She moved around the space with casual familiarity, knowing exactly where we kept coffee mugs and spoons. Derek stood behind her, arms wrapped around her waist, chin resting on her shoulder. The intimacy of it knocked the wind from my lungs. This wasn't new. This was practiced, comfortable routine. She turned in his embrace and they kissed with a passion I hadn't seen from Derek in 2 years. "Where are the boys?" Chloe asked when they finally separated. "Dropped them at Mum's. Told her Alana needed me to run errands." He brushed her hair back, a gesture so tender it made bile rise in my throat. "We have the whole day." "I still feel guilty," Chloe said, but her actions betrayed her words as she pulled him closer. "She's my sister, who works herself to death and barely notices I exist anymore," Derek countered. "You can't feel guilty for finding happiness. Finding happiness. As if our marriage was just an inconvenience to overcome. As if our children were obstacles to navigate around. As if 7 years meant nothing." I ran to the bathroom and emptied my stomach, breakfast burning its way back up. Another nurse found me there, insisted on checking my temperature. Worried I'd caught something from the unit. I let her fuss, while my world crumbled in real time through a camera the size of a quarter. The charge nurse sent me to the break room with strict orders to rest for 30 minutes. I sat in the corner, phone hidden under the table, watching my husband and sister destroy everything I thought I knew. They'd moved to the living room now, her legs across his lap, while he showed her something on his laptop. California would be perfect, he said. Tech jobs everywhere, and you could work for any firm you wanted. What about custody? Chloe asked. Would she fight it? Not if we document her mental state. All these extra shifts barely seeing the kids. Any judge would see I'm the primary caregiver. The room spun. They weren't just having an affair. They were planning to take my children. My boys, who I worked myself raw to provide for, were being used as pawns in their sick game. I forced myself to keep watching to gather evidence. Derek pulled up house listings in San Diego, pointing out school districts and proximity to beaches. Chloe mentioned she'd already started applying to jobs that her current position was remote anyway, so the transition would be easy. They discussed timing lawyers, even what furniture they'd take from our home. The boys love you already, Derek said. It'll be an easy adjustment. They're sweet kids. I just wish... She trailed off. What? I wish we'd met first, before you married her. Derek pulled her onto his lap. We have now. That's what matters. At 11:45, they headed upstairs to our bedroom. I shut off the app, unable to witness that final violation. My marriage was over. Had been for who knows how long. But they'd underestimated me. They'd forgotten that the exhausted, overworked wife was also a woman who'd fought her way through nursing school, who'd survived her mother's death and father's cancer, who'd built a life from nothing. I stood up, washed my face, and walked back onto the unit with a smile that fooled everyone. Inside, I was already planning their destruction. They wanted to document my mental state. I'd document theirs first. Every word, every action, every lie they'd told was being recorded on that nanny cam. The next 90 minutes passed in a strange calm. I administered medications, comforted parents, updated charts. My hands remained steady, even as my heart shattered into pieces too small to ever reassemble. When my lunch break finally arrived at 1 o'clock, I told Brenda I needed to handle a family emergency. Go, she said without hesitation. We've got coverage. I made one stop at the pharmacy for a USB drive, then drove home with deadly purpose. Let them think they'd won. Let them plan their perfect life in California. They had no idea what was coming. The drive home from the hospital took 37 minutes in light midday traffic, each mile bringing a new wave of nausea and rage. I pulled into a grocery store parking lot 3 blocks from our house, needing time to think, before confronting the destruction of my life. Sitting in my car, I opened the Nanny Cam app again and scrolled back to 7:30 that morning right after I'd left. The footage was clear audio crisp, thanks to the high-end system Derek had ironically insisted we buy for the boys' safety. I watched my husband immediately grab his phone the moment my car left the driveway. Coast is clear, baby, he said. She bought everything, even made her a special lunch with a love note. The laugh that followed made my skin crawl. This was a different Derek one I'd never seen in 7 years. Cold, calculating, performative. I kept recording everything to my phone, then backed it up to 3 different cloud services. If they wanted to play dirty, I'd bury them in mud. The timestamp showed 7:45 when Derek roused the boys. They were confused, rubbing sleep from their eyes as he dressed them hurriedly. Noah asked for me, and Derek's response was sharp. Mommy's working. She's always working. Now hurry up. By 8:15, he had them in his BMW heading to Patricia's house. The camera caught him returning at 8:40, immediately calling someone. 20 minutes out, Chloe's voice confirmed. Did Patricia ask questions? Told her Alana had asked me to run errands for the hospital fundraiser. She bought it. My mother-in-law, who'd become my biggest support after Mum died, was being used as an unwitting accomplice. The betrayal spread like poison through every relationship I valued. Derek spent the next 15 minutes cleaning, shoving toys into closets, lighting the expensive candles we saved for special occasions. When Chloe arrived at 9 on the dot, rolling a small suitcase behind her, my last hope for misunderstanding died. She'd come prepared to stay. They embraced in the doorway with the desperation of lovers kept apart. Not two people sneaking around behind a wife and sister's back. I forced myself to watch them make breakfast together in my kitchen, using my grandmother's cast-iron skillet, drinking from the mugs we'd gotten as wedding gifts. The casual domesticity hurt more than the passionate kissing. They'd built a routine in my absence, turned my home into their love nest. The conversation at 9:30 made everything clear. This had started 6 months ago during Dad's final rounds of chemotherapy. When I'd been sleeping at the hospital to be with him, Chloe had been comforting Derek through his loneliness. She'd stayed in our guest room to help with the boys, and apparently helped herself to my husband, too. "I never meant for it to happen," Chloe said, though her hand on his thigh suggested otherwise. "But when you kissed me that night after David's funeral, everything changed." My father's funeral. While I'd been destroyed by grief, they'd been finding each other. The image of that day was seared in memory. Derek holding me as I sobbed graveside. Chloe rubbing my back, the three of us standing united against loss. Except two of them had been united in something else entirely. By 10 o'clock, they'd moved to discussing logistics. Derek had been siphoning money from our joint accounts for months, claiming business expenses. The $30,000 I thought went to updating his home office equipment had actually gone to a separate account he shared with Chloe. They had an apartment already, a furnished two-bedroom in San Diego, where she'd been flying monthly for their rendezvous. "The lease is in both our names, starting January," Derek explained, showing her documents on his laptop. "By then, the divorce should be in motion." "What if she fights it?" Chloe asked, biting her lip in a way that looked practiced. "She's not stupid, despite what you say. She's exhausted and burned out. Haven't you seen how she looks lately? Any court will see she's an absent mother choosing career over family." He pulled up more documents. "I've been documenting everything. Every missed dinner, every time she chose an extra shift every morning, the boys asked for her and she was gone. The irony that I was gone because someone had to pay our bills while he played entrepreneur with no clients wasn't lost on me. But courts didn't always see through carefully crafted narratives, especially when the father could demonstrate being the primary caregiver. At 10:15, Chloe brought up something that stopped my heart. "Did you get the recording from last week?" When she yelled at Noah for spilling juice. "Yeah, got it. Audio's perfect." Out of context, she sounds unhinged. I remembered that morning. Noah had knocked over a full pitcher of orange juice minutes before I had to leave for work, soaking my only clean scrubs. I'd raised my voice immediately, apologizing and hugging him. But edited properly, it would sound like verbal abuse. They continued planning while I sat in my car, documenting everything. California dreaming turned into custody strategies. Financial planning became theft documentation. By 11, they were discussing the pregnancy. Chloe was 3 months along, due in April. My sister was carrying my husband's baby while sleeping in my bed. "We'll tell the boys they're getting a sibling after the divorce," Derek said, hand on her still flat stomach. "Kids are resilient." "Alana's going to lose it," Chloe said with something close to glee. "She always wanted another baby." True, I'd begged Derek for another child, but he'd said we couldn't afford it with the mortgage refinance. Apparently, we couldn't afford it because he was funding a second life across the country. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. At 11:30, they ascended to our bedroom. I forced myself to keep the app open, recording audio, even though I couldn't watch. Their voices carried enough to make me physically ill again. In our bed, under the quilt my grandmother made, they solidified their betrayal in the most primitive way possible. By noon, I'd seen enough. I drove to a coffee shop with Wi-Fi and began my counter-offensive. First, I called Lisa Hartman, Boston's most ruthless divorce attorney. Her secretary said she was booked for weeks, but when I mentioned urgent custody concerns and documented infidelity, Lisa herself came on the line. How documented? She asked. 6 hours of high-definition video with audio financial records and conspiracy to commit custodial interference. How soon can you get here, Mother? 20 minutes. I'll clear my afternoon. Next, I called Patricia. She answered on the second ring, boys chattering in the background. Alana, honey, Derek said you needed him to run errands. Patricia, I need you to keep the boys for tonight. Don't tell Derek. I'll explain everything tomorrow, but please trust me. Her pause was long, but her response was firm. Of course. Whatever you need. My final call was to the bank. In 15 minutes, I'd frozen our joint accounts, opened a separate checking account, and transferred my last paycheck. The credit cards were next all cancelled, except the one in my name alone. Derek would find out soon enough, but I'd have my evidence secured first. Lisa Hartman's office occupied the top floor of a Beacon Hill brownstone. Her receptionist, a woman who looked like she could stare down Satan himself, immediately ushered me into a conference room. Lisa appeared moments later, all sharp edges and expensive suit. The kind of woman who ate men like Derek for breakfast. Show me what you have, she said without preamble. For the next hour, I played the footage, showed the financial records I'd screenshotted, explained the California plans. Lisa took notes on a legal pad, occasionally pausing the video to screenshot particular frames. Her expression never changed, but I caught the slight smile when Derek mentioned taking the boys. He's an idiot, she said finally. This is conspiracy to commit fraud, alienation of affection, and potentially kidnapping if he tried to take the boys without consent. The pregnancy complicates things but ultimately works in our favor. Shows prolonged deception. What about custody? With this evidence, he'll be lucky to get supervised visitation. Document everything from here forward. Download all footage, forward all emails, screenshot all texts. She slid a card across the table. This is a private investigator who can pull the financial records legally. Your husband's been stealing marital assets. By 2 o'clock, I was back in my car with a plan. Lisa had filed emergency paperwork for exclusive use of the marital home and temporary custody orders. A locksmith would meet me at 4. The investigator was already pulling credit reports and bank records. Derek's carefully constructed plan was about to collapse like the house of cards it was. I checked the camera one more time. They were in the kitchen again, Derek making lunch, while Chloe sat at the breakfast bar, reading from her phone. The domesticity of it, the casual comfort showed this wasn't just a fair fog. They'd built a complete parallel life. Sarah from the mommy group texted asking if Alana's okay, Chloe said. She hasn't responded to playdate requests in weeks. Tell her Alana's been dealing with work stress. Set the groundwork for later. Derek plated sandwiches with the same care he'd shown making my breakfast. The more people who see her as struggling, the better. They were recruiting my friends into their narrative. Sarah, who'd been my support when the boys were colicky newborns, was being fed lies to support their custody grab. The calculated cruelty took my breath away. At 2:30, Derek's phone rang, the bank calling about the frozen accounts. His face went from confusion to anger to panic in seconds. Must be some mistake, he told them. I'll come in tomorrow. Maybe Alana found out, Chloe said, fear creeping into her voice. Impossible. She's at work, and even if she knew, she'd confront me first. Too emotional to think strategically. He kissed her forehead. Probably identity theft or something. The assumption that I'd react emotionally rather than strategically would be his downfall. While they debated calling the bank again, I was meeting with the locksmith, arranging for every lock to be changed at 4 o'clock sharp. Patricia had agreed to keep the boys for dinner. The investigator had already found 3 credit cards I didn't know existed, all maxed out in both our names. By 3:45, everything was in motion. I sat in my car down the street, watching through the camera as Derek and Chloe relaxed on my couch, planning their future with my children. In 15 minutes, that future would explode. The exhausted, overworked wife they'd dismissed as too emotional to fight back was about to teach them both a lesson about underestimating a mother protecting her cubs. The locksmith's van pulled up at exactly 4 o'clock. Lisa had insisted on coming herself, bringing a process server and a police officer for safety. My best friend Maria, who'd taken a half day from her nursing job when I called, parked behind them. We converged on the house like an army, if armies wore scrubs and carried legal documents instead of weapons. I unlocked the front door with my key one last time, stepping into the home I'd loved for 5 years. The sound of Derek's laughter drifted from the living room, followed by Chloe's giggle. They were about to learn that while they'd been playing house, I'd been building a case. "Interesting workday, Derek," I said from the doorway. The scene that followed would have been comedic if it hadn't been my life exploding in high definition. Derek jumped off the couch so fast, he knocked over the coffee table, sending their wine glasses crashing to the floor. The red wine spread across our cream carpet like blood at a crime scene. Chloe grabbed a throw pillow to cover herself, though she was fully dressed, the gesture more about shame than modesty. "Alana, you're supposed to be at work." Derek's voice cracked like a teenager caught with his father's car. "Supposed to be a lot of things," I said, stepping fully into the room. Lisa flanked my left, the police officer on my right, Maria behind me with her phone recording everything. Supposed to be able to trust my husband. Supposed to be able to rely on my sister. Supposed to be working myself to death while you two played house in my home. Chloe started crying immediately, mascara running in black rivers down her cheeks. "Alana, I can explain. It's not what it looks like." "Really, because it looks like you're wearing my robe, drinking my wine, and screwing my husband on my couch." I pulled out my phone, swiping to the Nanny Cam app. "Would you like to see what else it looks like?" The color drained from Derek's face as I connected my phone to our smart TV. The morning's footage began playing, their own voices filling the room. Derek lunged for the remote, but the officer stepped forward, hand on his radio. "Sir, step back. This is my house. She can't just barge in here." Derek's carefully maintained composure cracked like cheap paint. "Actually," Lisa interjected, pulling documents from her briefcase, "Mrs. Thompson has every right to be here. This is her legal residence. You, however, are being served with an emergency protective order." The process server stepped forward, handing Derek the papers. He threw them on the floor without reading them, focusing on me with rage that would have been terrifying if I'd been alone. "You can't kick me out of my own house. The house is in both names, but given the documented financial fraud and conspiracy to commit custodial interference, the emergency order grants my client exclusive use of the marital home." Lisa's voice was ice. "You have 1 hour to gather essential belongings." On the TV, past Derek was explaining to past Chloe how they'd take the boys to California. Present. Chloe had stopped crying, her face shifting from distressed to calculating. "Alana, he told me you were separated, that you'd already discussed divorce." "Don't you dare," Derek snarled at her. "Don't you dare turn on me now." "Turn on you?" "You said she knew. You said she was dating someone at the hospital." Chloe stood my robe falling open to reveal she was wearing my favorite lingerie underneath. The La Perla set Derek had given me for our anniversary that I'd never worn because I was too exhausted. "Interesting," I said, voice steady despite the volcano in my chest. Tell me, Chloe, which co-worker was I supposedly dating while working 60-hour weeks to pay for Derek's fake business? His business isn't fake, Chloe protested, then caught herself. The admission that she knew details about his work contradicted her claim of thinking we were separated. Maria stepped forward, still recording. For the record, Alana hasn't dated anyone. She barely has time to eat between shifts. Derek's phone started ringing. The bank again, probably about the credit cards I'd just cancelled. He ignored it, focusing on me with desperation, replacing anger. Baby, we can work this out. It was a mistake. I was lonely, you were never home, and she seduced me. I seduced you? Chloe shrieked. You came to my apartment in Miami. You started this. You didn't exactly say no, did you? And now you're pregnant with my kid while my actual children are at my mother's house. The admission hung in the air like toxic gas. I hadn't mentioned the pregnancy yet, wanting to see if either would confess. Lisa made a note on her pad, and I saw the officer's expression shift from professional neutrality to disgust. Pregnant? I asked quietly. How far along? Chloe lifted her chin with defiance that reminded me of when we were kids, and she'd broken Mum's vase but blamed the cat. 14 weeks. 14 weeks. I did the math quickly. That was during Dad's last hospital stay when I'd been sleeping in chairs beside his bed while he fought for each breath. While I held his hand through chemotherapy hell, they'd been creating life through betrayal. Get out, I said, surprising myself with the calm in my voice. Both of you, now. I need my things, Derek protested. My computer, my clothes. The officer will escort you to pack one bag of essentials, Lisa informed him. Everything else will be handled through legal channels. Any attempt to remove marital assets will be prosecuted as theft. The locksmith had been working quietly in the background, replacing the front door lock while we argued. He moved to the back door, next the sound of his drill a metallic punctuation to the dissolution of my marriage. Derek turned his rage on Chloe. This is your fault. If you hadn't insisted on coming here today, my fault. You're the one who said she was too stupid to notice. You're the one who's been stealing money for months. That money was for our future, our future. You mean the apartment you put in both our names without telling me I'd be legally responsible for the lease? They turned on each other like rabid dogs, each revelation another nail in the coffin of their relationship. The officer finally intervened, escorting Derek upstairs to pack, while Chloe stood in my living room, my robe hanging off her shoulders like the costume it had always been. Alana, she started, but I held up my hand. No, you don't get to explain. You don't get to apologize. You held my hand at Dad's funeral while carrying my husband's baby. You listened to me cry about feeling distant from Derek while you were the reason why. You are dead to me. Her tears started again, but they were performance art, not genuine emotion. Where am I supposed to go? Not my problem. Maybe Derek's apartment in San Diego. Oh wait, you didn't know he put that lease in your name? Check your credit report, sis. You're on the hook for $2,400 a month. The revelation that I knew about the apartment sparked fresh panic in her eyes. She grabbed her phone, presumably to check her credit, and I saw the moment she discovered the extent of Derek's deception. 3 credit cards, the apartment lease, even a car loan for a vehicle she'd never seen. He used my social security number. Her voice was small, shocked. The man who betrayed his wife betrayed his mistress too. Shocking. I turned to Maria. Make sure you get her reaction on video. Her lawyers will need it when she sues him for identity theft. Derek came thundering down the stairs, garbage bag of belongings in hand, the officer close behind. He'd changed into jeans and a t-shirt, his carefully styled hair now disheveled. The mask had completely fallen away, revealing the stranger I'd apparently been married to for 7 years. "This isn't over," he said, trying for menace, but achieving only petulance. "I'll get custody. The boys need their father." The father who left them at his mother's to spend the day with his pregnant mistress. The father who stole their college funds to finance an affair. The father who planned to kidnap them to California. I pulled up my phone, showing him the hours of footage I'd saved. "Good luck with that." The fight went out of him like air from a punctured balloon. He looked at Chloe, who was frantically scrolling through her phone, discovering the full extent of his financial betrayal to her. They'd played house in my home while building their relationship on foundations of mutual deception. "You told me she was abusive," Chloe said to Derek, voice rising. "You said she hit you, that you were scared for the boys. You showed me bruises." Bruises? I laughed, actually laughed. Derek hasn't had a bruise in his life. The man uses more skincare products than me. "From the gym," Derek protested weakly. "I showed you bruises from the gym. You haven't been to the gym in 2 years," I countered. "The membership you claim to have. Cancelled it to save money, remember?" Lisa stepped forward, addressing them both. "I suggest you both secure legal counsel immediately. Mrs. Thompson will be pursuing full custody alimony and damages for theft of marital assets. Additionally, there may be criminal charges for fraud and conspiracy." The locksmith finished the back door and moved to the garage. The systematic clicking of new locks being installed sounded like prison doors slamming. Derek and Chloe stood in what had been our living room, looking lost and pathetic, their grand romance revealed as a tawdry affair built on lies and stolen money. "Get out," I repeated. "And Derek. Your mother knows everything. I called her an hour ago. She's keeping the boys tonight and this weekend. She also wanted me to tell you that you're no longer welcome at Sunday dinners." The blow landed perfectly. Patricia's rejection meant more to him than losing me. I could see it in his face. His mother had been his champion since childhood, defending him against every teacher, coach, and girlfriend who'd ever challenged him. Losing her support meant losing his last safe harbor. Chloe gathered her clothes from the floor, the pile telling its own story of premeditation. Underwear dress, heels, jewelry. I recognized as pieces that had gone missing over the past months. She'd been taking trophies from my life while pretending to support me through grief. They left together, but separately, if that made sense. Walking out my door with feet between them. No touching, no comfort for each other. The officer followed to ensure they left the property. Lisa and the locksmith continued their work, while Maria held me as I finally let myself feel the earthquake of emotion I'd been suppressing. "You did it," she whispered. "You got them out. It's not over," I said, knowing Derek would fight the custody arrangement, knowing Chloe would try to worm her way back into the family's good graces, knowing the road ahead would be brutal. "No," Lisa agreed, returning from supervising the lock change. "But you won the first battle decisively. That footage is gold. He's done." I looked around my living room, the wine stain already setting into the carpet, the throw pillows scattered like casualties of war. The space felt violated, contaminated by their presence. But it was still mine. The boys would still have their home, their toys, their safe space. My phone buzzed with a call from Patricia. "Alana, honey, the boys are asking for you. Should I tell them you'll see them tomorrow?" "Actually, I'll come get them now," I decided. "They need to sleep in their own beds tonight." "Are you sure?" "After everything. They need normal. I need them. We'll be okay." And for the first time all day, I actually believed it. The house was mine. The boys were safe, and the 2 people who'd tried to destroy us were gone. There would be lawyers and court dates and custody evaluations ahead. But tonight my babies would sleep in their race car beds while I stood guard against anyone who'd try to hurt us again. Lisa gathered her papers. The locksmith handed me the new keys, and Maria helped me start cleaning the wine from the carpet. The stain would probably never fully come out, a permanent reminder of the day I discovered betrayal and chose to fight instead of crumble. As I drove to Patricia's to get my boys, I passed Derek's BMW, parked at a cheap motel off Route 1. Chloe's rental car was 3 spaces away. They'd already separated their grand love story, ending in a parking lot that charged by the hour. The poetic justice was almost enough to make me smile. The next 48 hours unfolded like a symphony of consequences, each note perfectly timed to create a crescendo of destruction for Derek and Chloe's fantasy life. I'd imagined revenge would taste sweet. Instead, it felt like surgery necessary, but brutal cutting away diseased tissue to save what remained. Thursday morning came too early. The boys bouncing on my bed at 6, asking where Daddy was. I'd rehearsed this moment with Patricia the night before, choosing words carefully to protect their innocence while acknowledging change. Daddy needs to stay somewhere else for a while, I explained, pulling them close. But he still loves you very much. Is he sick? Ethan asked, his 4-year-old logic searching for reasons that made sense. Sort of, sweetheart. Sometimes adults need space to figure things out. Noah, always more intuitive, studied my face. Are you sad, Mommy? A little. But I'm happy to be here with you two. We're going to be just fine. Patricia had been a godsend, arriving at 7 with breakfast and activities to keep the boys busy. Her disgust with Derek was palpable, 40 years of maternal love curdling into disappointment so profound it seemed to age her overnight. She'd raised him alone after his father left, sacrificing everything to give him opportunities. Finding out he'd become the kind of man who'd destroy his family for selfish desires broke something in her. I keep thinking where I went wrong, she said, while the boys played with Legos in the next room. I taught him about respect, loyalty, commitment. How did he become this? It's not your fault. I assured her, though, privately, I wondered if Derek had always been selfish, just better at hiding it when life was easier. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since the confrontation. Derek had sent 37 texts overnight, ranging from rage to bargaining to threats to pathetic pleading. Chloe had tried calling 18 times, leaving voicemails that I deleted without listening. But the most interesting messages came from unexpected sources. Madison, our babysitter, had texted asking if it was true about Derek and Chloe. When I confirmed, she replied with a novel-length message about Derek's inappropriate comments during her babysitting nights, how he'd offered her extra money to stay later, how uncomfortable he'd made her feel. She'd stopped accepting jobs from us because of him, not me. Then came the message from Jennifer, who lived 3 houses down. She'd seen Chloe's car parked in our driveway multiple times over the past months when I was at work. She'd assumed I knew that we were just close sisters. The neighborhood WhatsApp group had apparently been discussing it for weeks, debating whether to tell me. By Thursday afternoon, Lisa had worked her legal magic. The emergency custody order was signed. Derek was allowed supervised visitation every other Saturday for 4 hours. The forensic accountant she'd hired had already traced $60,000 in marital assets that Derek had hidden or spent on Chloe. The apartment in San Diego. The credit cards, mysterious cash withdrawals that coincided with Chloe's Instagram posts from expensive restaurants and hotels. The most damaging discovery came from Derek's work laptop, which he'd stupidly left logged into our shared cloud storage. There were no clients. His IT consulting business had been fictional for over a year. The home office he claimed to need upgrading was a gaming setup. The client meetings were poker games and afternoon rendezvous with Chloe. He'd been living entirely off my nursing salary while playing successful entrepreneur for his mother and our friends. I was still processing this when Patricia called. Alana, you need to know something. Derek just called asking for money. $20,000 to pay some men who are threatening him. What men? He wouldn't say, but he sounded scared. Really scared. I told him I couldn't help him after what he'd done. He called me terrible things I won't repeat. The pieces clicked together. Derek had probably borrowed money for his fake business or gambling using our house as collateral or promising returns he couldn't deliver. The financial crimes were multiplying like cancer cells, each discovery revealing two more. Friday morning brought Chloe to my door despite the restraining order. She looked destroyed, designer clothes replaced with sweatpants, her usually perfect hair unwashed and tangled. The security camera caught everything as she rang the doorbell, repeatedly sobbing. Please, Alana. He stole everything. My credit is ruined. I'm pregnant and homeless. And he won't answer my calls. I called the police instead of answering. She was still there when they arrived, screaming about family loyalty and forgiveness. The officers were the same ones from Wednesday, their patience worn thin. They arrested her for violating the protective order, her wails echoing down our quiet street as neighbors gathered to watch. The neighborhood Facebook group exploded with activity. Screenshots were shared, theories proposed. Team Alana shirts jokingly suggested. The dirty laundry I'd tried to keep private was flapping in the digital wind for everyone to see. But surprisingly, the support was overwhelming. Meal trains were organized playdates, offered hugs given freely by people I'd only waved to in passing. Derek's situation deteriorated rapidly. The motel had kicked him out after his credit card was declined. His BMW was repossessed Friday afternoon, the tow truck driver telling neighbors Derek owed $40,000 on a car worth half that. He'd been financing a luxury lifestyle on fantasy money, and the bill had come due simultaneously with his exposure. His brother Marcus called me Friday evening, his voice careful and measured. I'm not calling to defend him, but you should know he's in real trouble. The people he owes money to aren't patient types. Not my problem anymore, Marcus. I know, I wanted to apologize. I suspected something was going on, but didn't want to get involved. I should have told you. Yeah, you should have. For what it's worth, Mum's completely on your side. She's already changed her will to leave everything in trust for the boys, nothing for Derek. The family Derek had always taken for granted was dismantling their connection to him with surgical precision. His cousins unfriended him on social media. His uncle rescinded a job offer. His grandmother returned his birthday check. The golden boy who'd always been rescued from his mistakes was finally facing consequences alone. Saturday morning's supervised visitation was at a neutral location, a family centre with cameras and staff trained in high-conflict custody situations. I dropped the boys off at 9. Derek arriving 15 minutes late via Uber wearing the same clothes from Thursday. The supervisor later reported he'd spent most of the time on his phone, trying to arrange somewhere to stay, barely interacting with Ethan and Noah. The boys returned subdued and confused. Noah asked why Daddy smelled funny and why he kept crying. Ethan wanted to know why they couldn't go to Daddy's house. 4-year-olds shouldn't have to process adult failures. But here we were navigating wreckage Derek had created. That evening, while the boys slept, I sat in my kitchen with Maria wine and the weight of everything finally settling in. He called me 17 times during the visitation, I told her, showing my phone log. Left messages saying Chloe ruined everything, that he wants to come home, that he'll go to therapy. Classic Derek. It's everyone else's fault. Maria had known us since nursing school, watched our relationship evolve from passionate to practical to pathological. He hasn't taken responsibility for anything, has he? No. In his mind, I drove him to it by working too much. Chloe seduced him. The economy destroyed his business that never existed. Everyone's to blame but him. My phone lit up with another call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail, but the message was from Chloe's mother in Arizona. The careful, formal tone couldn't hide her fury as she informed me that Chloe had been admitted to the hospital for a panic attack and dehydration. She was losing the pregnancy, the stress and chaos, finally affecting the innocent life caught in the crossfire. I felt nothing. No sympathy, no satisfaction, just empty acknowledgement that actions had consequences. The baby would have been my children's half-sibling, a permanent connection to betrayal. Its loss was probably a mercy for everyone, especially the child who would have been born into dysfunction and resentment. Sunday arrived grey and drizzling, matching the mood perfectly. Patricia came for lunch, bringing the boys' favourite mac and cheese and insisting on cleaning while I rested. She'd aged years in days, the vibrant woman who'd been like a mother to me, replaced by someone hollow-eyed and heartbroken. "I've been thinking about when Derek's father left," she said, washing dishes with mechanical precision. "I was so determined Derek wouldn't grow up feeling abandoned that I overcompensated. Never let him face consequences, always made excuses, always rescued him. I created this monster." "Patricia, you loved your son. That's not wrong. But I didn't teach him that love requires respect, that marriage means sacrifice, that children come first always. I taught him he was special, that rules bent for him, that someone would always clean up his messes." She turned to face me, tears streaming down weathered cheeks. "I failed you and my grandsons. I'm so sorry." We held each other in my kitchen while rain pelted windows and boys napped upstairs. Two women bound by loving the wrong version of the same man, grieving different losses, but understanding each other completely. By Sunday evening, Derek's world had fully imploded. His attempt to access our investment accounts triggered fraud alerts, freezing assets he desperately needed. The apartment complex in San Diego was threatening legal action for breach of lease. 3 different creditors were calling my phone searching for him. The house of cards hadn't just fallen. It had been incinerated, leaving only ash and debt in its wake. Lisa called with an update that should have brought satisfaction, but only deepened exhaustion. The forensic accountant found more. "He took out a $75,000 business loan using your forged signature. You're technically liable, but we can prove fraud. Criminal charges are definitely coming." How did I not know? The question haunted me. How had I shared a bed? A life children with someone capable of such deception? Had there been signs? I'd ignored red flags. I'd explained away, warnings I'd missed while focused on survival instead of observation. "Con artists are good at what they do," Lisa said gently. "And when it's someone you love, someone you trust, the betrayal is easier because you're not looking for it." Monday would bring lawyers, court filings, custody evaluation, and the exhausting machinery of divorce. But Sunday night was for healing, for holding my boys close, and reading extra stories, for letting Patricia stay in the guest room, because neither of us wanted to be alone with our thoughts. Derek texted one last time before I blocked his number permanently. "You've ruined everything. I hope you're happy." The projection was so complete it almost circled back to funny. He'd destroyed our marriage, traumatized our children, stolen our money, and somehow I was the villain in his narrative. But his opinion no longer mattered. The man I'd loved never existed, just a character he'd played until the performance became too exhausting to maintain. I looked in on the boys one final time before bed. They slept peacefully, dinosaur nightlights, casting soft shadows on walls their father would never paint again. Tomorrow would bring questions and challenges. But tonight they were safe, loved, and free from the toxic performance their parents' marriage had become. The storm would pass. The wounds would scar over. The boys would adapt with the resilience children mysteriously possess. And somewhere in the ruins Derek had created, we'd build something better, something honest, something ours. 3 months had passed since that Wednesday, when forgotten technology exposed the truth hiding in plain sight. January snow blanketed Boston, covering the ground in pristine white that reminded me of fresh starts and buried secrets. The boys pressed their noses against the window breath fogging glass as they watched snowflakes dance, unaware that their lives had been completely restructured while they built snowmen and learned to write their names. The legal machinery had ground forward with relentless precision. Derek's charges read like a criminal's resume: fraud, forgery, theft, embezzlement. The business loan with my forged signature had been the tipping point, transforming civil divorce into criminal prosecution. He'd been arrested 2 weeks after our confrontation, released on bail. His mother refused to pay, finally landing in his brother's basement with an ankle monitor and a public defender. The man who'd worn Italian shoes and designer suits to non-existent client meetings now appeared in court in borrowed clothes that never quite fit. Each hearing revealed another layer of deception. Another account drained another lie that had funded his fantasy life. The final tally reached $120,000 stolen over 18 months, not counting the emotional debt that no court could calculate. Chloe had disappeared to Arizona after losing the pregnancy. Her social media accounts deleted, her phone disconnected. Our mutual friends reported she'd moved back with our parents, working at a local mall while trying to rebuild credit Derek had destroyed. She'd sent one letter through her lawyer, 6 pages of justification and blame, that I'd burned in Patricia's fireplace while we drank wine and watched flames consume words that meant nothing. The divorce had finalized faster than expected, Derek's eagerness to avoid further criminal charges, making him surprisingly cooperative. He'd signed away rights he'd never exercised, agreed to supervised visitation. He rarely attended, accepted support payments he couldn't make. The paper dissolution of our marriage felt anticlimactic after the explosive reveal, just signatures on documents that made legal what had been true for longer than I'd known. My promotion to charge nurse had come through in December, along with a schedule that actually allowed me to see my children awake. The hospital administration, aware of my situation through the nursing grapevine that spread gossip faster than disease, had been unexpectedly supportive. My supervisor had even connected me with their employee assistance program, providing free therapy that helped process betrayal too complex for friends to fully understand. The therapist, a woman named Rachel, who'd seen enough divorce trauma to write textbooks, had helped me understand that Derek's betrayal wasn't about my inadequacy, but his emptiness. People who create elaborate deceptions are running from something, she'd explained, usually themselves. You were collateral damage in his war with reality. The boys had adapted with remarkable resilience, though not without struggles. Noah had started wetting the bed again, regression the therapist assured me was normal. Ethan had become protective, insisting on checking locks and asking repeatedly if I was happy. Their play had changed too. Their toy figures now lived in one house instead of two, the daddy figure often left in the toy box, while Mommy went on adventures with the children. Patricia had become our rock, moving into the guest room temporarily to help with childcare and healing. Her relationship with Derek had fractured beyond repair when he'd accused her of choosing me over blood. Blood doesn't lie, steal, and destroy, she'd told him in their final conversation. Alana's shown more character in 3 months than you have in 35 years. Our daily routine had found rhythm in the chaos. Morning breakfasts without performance, evening stories without distraction, weekends at the park without wondering what deception was occurring in my absence. The house felt different now, lighter somehow, as if Derek's lies had been atmospheric pressure we'd unconsciously endured until their sudden release let us breathe freely. The financial recovery would take years. Despite Lisa's best efforts, the debts Derek had created couldn't all be discharged. I'd kept the house, but refinanced again. Payments stretched but manageable with my new salary and Patricia's contribution. The boys' college funds were gone, but we'd started rebuilding with $10 a week, teaching them that small, consistent efforts could overcome grand destructions. Support had come from unexpected sources. The neighborhood that had witnessed our public implosion had rallied with stunning kindness. Meal trains had evolved into regular dinner invitations, playdates into genuine friendships. Jennifer, from 3 houses down, had become particularly close, her own divorce story, creating understanding that sympathy alone couldn't achieve. Even professional relationships had strengthened. My colleagues, aware that I'd been carrying impossible weight, had redistributed responsibilities without being asked. Brenda had covered shifts when court dates conflicted with work, never accepting repayment beyond hugs and promises to pay it forward someday. The pediatric ICU that had been my escape became my sanctuary, saving lives while rebuilding my own. Derek's descent had been swift and absolute. The criminal trial was scheduled for March. His public defender warning he'd likely serve 2 to 3 years minimum. His IT consulting website had been removed for non-payment. His social media presence erased after harassment from people discovering his crimes. The golden boy who'd peaked in college had finally hit bottom, though even now he blamed everyone except himself. His supervised visitations had dwindled from every other week to once a month when he bothered showing up. The boys had stopped asking when they'd see Daddy, accepting his absence with the same adaptability they'd shown when we'd switched from whole milk to oat milk. Children, I'd learned, adjusted to new realities faster than adults who clung to old fantasies. The most unexpected development had been Marcus, Derek's brother, stepping into an uncle role he'd previously avoided. He'd started taking the boys to hockey games, teaching them to skate, providing male presence without excusing his brother's absence. "Someone needs to show them what a real man acts like," he'd said simply. Derek never learned, but they still can. Dating remained a distant possibility, something friends mentioned, but I couldn't fathom. Trust felt like a foreign language I'd spoken once, but forgotten the grammar, too complex to relearn while healing. The therapist said it would come eventually, that betrayal this profound required extensive recovery before risking vulnerability again. For now, loving my boys and myself felt like enough emotional investment. Nights remained hardest when the boys slept, and silence amplified thoughts. I'd catch myself checking the Nanny Cam app that now only showed empty rooms and sleeping children, no secrets hiding in pixels. The camera that had revealed destruction had become a comfort proof that what I saw was real, that deception required opportunity I no longer provided. Sometimes I wondered about the alternate timeline, where I hadn't forgotten to turn off the camera, where Derek's performance had continued indefinitely. Would I have eventually noticed 20,000 here, 30,000 there? Would Chloe's pregnancy have forced revelation? Would the boys have grown up in a house built on lies, learning that love meant deception and marriage meant performance? The what-ifs could spiral endlessly. But Rachel had taught me to interrupt them with gratitude for what is. The boys were healthy, happy, and honest. Patricia had become the mother figure I'd lost too young. My career was thriving without the anchor of Derek's manufactured crises. The house was mine, filled with truth instead of carefully crafted illusions. Recovery wasn't linear. Some days, rage would surge unexpectedly, usually triggered by small things like finding Derek's forgotten coffee mug or receiving medical bills he'd hidden. Other days, sadness would settle like fog, grieving not the actual man, but the partnership I'd thought we'd built. The therapist called it complicated grief mourning, something that never existed while celebrating its loss. The boys had started asking age-appropriate questions about divorce, why families changed where Daddy lived now. I'd chosen honesty within reason, explaining that sometimes adults made mistakes that meant they couldn't live together anymore. But love for children never changed even when everything else did. They'd accepted this with the same simplicity they'd accepted that vegetables were necessary, even when unpleasant. Winter had brought unexpected peace. Snow days with the boys building forts, Patricia helped defend against imaginary dragons. Movie nights, where we ate popcorn for dinner because no one was there to judge. Dance parties in the kitchen while cooking using wooden spoons as microphones. The life I'd been too exhausted to enjoy while funding Derek's deception had finally become possible in his absence. The approaching trial would bring fresh wounds, public testimony about private betrayals. But Lisa had prepared me thoroughly, and the evidence was overwhelming. Derek's attempts to paint me as an absent mother had crumbled against the reality that I'd been the only functioning parent while he'd played entrepreneur. Even his own lawyer had suggested plea bargains to avoid the spectacle of trial. Friends asked if I regretted marrying him given how everything ended. The answer was complex. Without Derek, there would be no Ethan and Noah, no Patricia, no hard-won wisdom about strength I hadn't known I possessed. The marriage had been real, even if he hadn't been my commitment authentic despite his performance. Regretting it would mean regretting paths that led to boys who made every sacrifice worthwhile. The future stretched ahead, uncertain but ours to shape. The boys would grow up knowing their mother had fought for them, had chosen their stability over comfortable lies. They'd learn that integrity mattered more than image, that love required honesty, that someone who truly cared would never ask you to work yourself to death while they played games with your life. Spring would come, eventually melting snow to reveal what had been buried, but not destroyed. The bulbs I'd planted with the boys last fall would push through soil proof that beautiful things could grow from damaged ground. The house would fill with new memories, untainted by deception, built on foundation of truth that Derek's lies had inadvertently revealed. For now, winter continued its quiet healing. Patricia made soup while I helped with homework. The boys painted pictures of our family. 3 figures holding hands with a small dog they hoped to get someday. No daddy in the pictures anymore, just mummy, grandma, and brothers facing forward together. The nanny cam still recorded a silent witness to ordinary moments that felt extraordinary after surviving betrayal. It captured birthday parties and bedtime stories, tears over scraped knees and laughter over silly jokes. But it would never again reveal secrets, because there were none left to hide. Just a family rebuilt from honesty Derek had tried to destroy, but ultimately freed us to discover. The camera that had exposed the lie had become guardian of truth, watching over a home where love meant showing up, where trust was earned through consistency, where the only performances were puppet shows the boys staged with stuffed animals. It had saved us not just from deception, but from lives we might have lived indefinitely exhausted and exploited, never knowing the peace that came from alignment between appearance and reality. Some nights I'd check the footage just to see ordinary moments, the boys sharing toys, Patricia teaching them to tie shoes, our cat finally accepting that Derek wasn't coming back and reclaiming his spot on the couch. These simple scenes held more value than all Derek's elaborate productions, proof that authentic life surpassed any performance, that truth trumped even the prettiest lies. What would you do if you discovered your entire life was someone else's fiction? How would you rebuild when the foundation you'd trusted turned out to be sand? Would you have the courage to face truth that technology accidentally revealed? Or would comfortable blindness feel safer than devastating clarity? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had technology reveal something that changed everything? How did you find strength when betrayal came from those closest to you? Share your stories of survival and rebuilding, because sometimes knowing others have walked similar paths makes our own journey feel less lonely. If this story resonated with you, please consider hitting that subscribe button and notification bell. Share it with anyone who might need reminder that they're stronger than they know, that survival is possible, even when everything crumbles. Your support helps these stories reach people who might be sitting where I was 3 months ago, wondering if they're crazy for sensing something wrong. Thank you for listening to my journey from deception to discovery, from betrayal to building something better. Remember that sometimes the worst moments reveal the best truths, that strength emerges from situations we never thought we'd survive. Trust your instincts. Value your worth and never apologize for expecting honesty from people who claim to love you. Until next time, hold your children close. Trust yourself first, and remember that the best revenge against those who tried to break you is simply refusing to break. Stay strong, stay true, and stay tuned for more stories of ordinary people surviving extraordinary betrayals.